Hello, my beautiful, amazing listeners and watchers. If you are watching the YouTube video right now, welcome to another episode of the Body Love Binge with me, Victoria. Now, before I get into this episode, which is an epic one, I must say, let's talk pillows and sleeping positions for a moment, because this is very relevant in my life right now. And I have a pillow. And it's like a I don't think it's memory foam, that's a lie. It's like a foam one, and it's got like little side bits each side. So because I sleep on my back, I also have my head to the side. And so it's almost like a little shelf to like rest my head on so my neck doesn't stretch. I also struggle sometimes with it lower back pain because I'm always sleeping on my back, and I've got big glutes and a curved lower back. And so apparently sleeping with a pillow under your knees helps. So I'm going to try that. And Walter, my fiance, says he sleeps on his side. And then in my experience, and this is why I love your opinion, any side sleepers out there that don't wake up with a dead arm, how? That's the question. How do you sleep on your side without having a dead arm? Because I do sleep on my side occasionally, and then I'm always waking up with pins and needles and I can't feel my arm, and then I'm awake, so then I need a wee. Yeah, I think I don't actually sleep that much throughout the night, even though I'm in bed for like 9 hours. So share with me, are you a back sleeper or a side sleeper? And what kind of pillow do you have? Because I'm on the lookout for a new, decent, hopefully, if possible, all natural pillow. So without further ado, let me get into this week's episode, Hunger and Fullness versus Appetite and Satiety. What do you think the difference is? So just have a little think in your head. What do you think is the difference between hunger and fullness and appetite and satiety? Okay, so first of all, I'm going to start off by defining what appetite, hunger, fullness, and satiety are. What is appetite? Appetite is simply the desire to eat. It can and usually is a result of physical hunger, but it also can have other causes such as emotional or environmental conditions. What is hunger? Hunger is an uncomfortable or painful physical sensation caused by insufficient consumption of dietary energy. And many dieters, and this was me, have a very disordered relationship with hunger, meaning they can see hunger as a success or almost like a win at something, or like you're achieving something, or they can be very fearful of hunger because of all the past restriction, all the past diets they've been on. It's a very scary thing to feel hungry when your diet plan or your calorie allowance is saying, no, girl, you've got no calories left for the rest of the day. And you're like, fuck, I remember that so well. So it's both normal to feel scared of hunger and at the same time to see hunger as like a win or like you're succeeding at something. What is fullness? Fullness is simply a physical sensation of your tummy being full and expanded. And again, dieters, myself included in the past, have a very difficult relationship with fullness. Feeling full can represent memories or experiences of binge eating behavior, or feeling full can just feel like you've failed somehow or you've done something wrong. Most likely due to all the past times that you've dieted, restricted, fell off the wagon, binged, emotionally ate a load of food, felt terrible about yourself. Not only physically you were uncomfortable, but you also felt extreme emotional pain with the shame and the beating yourself up and all of that. So just generally enjoying a full, nourishing meal, if your tummy feels physically full after that, that can actually strike a nerve and then cause you to feel bad just because you're full. So just be curious about that. That's something that most clients aren't aware of until I, mirror that back to them, that it's okay if fullness triggers something and then we can work through that together, right? It's definitely not a failure if you feel full, because we eat food and it goes in our stomach and therefore our stomach expands. We're supposed to look like we've eaten food when we've eaten food, okay? Okay, the next one, what is satiety? So satiety is a state of having more than enough. It's a feeling of grounding, pleasurable satisfaction on all levels. So imagine having just eaten a deliciously satisfying meal and having met all of your physical and emotional needs without any guilt, without any guilt. That is satiety. So just like that was just hit the spot, that is just done it for me, I'm all good. That's what true satiety is. How many times would you say that you eat and you actually allow yourself to reach full satiety? Just an interesting question to ponder on. Sorry, those that are watching the YouTube video, I swear I've just been bitten by a mosquito. I know they don't bite, whatever it is they do on my arm. That's why I'm just itching and I'm distracted. Anyway, I will continue. On a serious note, fullness is not the same as satiety. You can eat to satiation or to full satisfaction. I consider these two to be the same. And you can have a full tummy after eating, or you can eat to full satisfaction and not feel full at all. This is because feeling deeply satisfied is due to your physical and emotional needs being met, not only your physical needs. So as an example, you could eat a huge plate of chicken and broccoli, maybe some brown rice if you're lucky, and feel physically stuffed, yet have a huge unmet emotional need for pleasure and enjoyment of the food, of the meal you've just consumed. And if you are only eating chicken, rice, and broccoli, you are most likely missing out on fats as well. So not only are you emotionally restricting, you're actually physically restricting in a way, even though you're super full, because your body's not got all the macronutrients that it needs. Another example, you could eat a delicious bar of chocolate and feel emotionally satisfied, yet still physically hungry and lacking in nutrients. That's not full satiety either. Or you could eat a small plate of macaroni cheese with a little side salad, a piece of garlic bread, not feel full in any way, but still feel completely physically and emotionally satisfied. So full satisfaction looks like meeting all of your needs at once. And as I was writing this to record the podcast and the YouTube today, it was yesterday that I wrote this, I had just eaten a delicious veggie burger with sweet potato fries, which were loaded with, I think it was jalapenos and cheese, because, why not? A ginger beer and then some gorgeous chocolates after for dessert. And I felt like physically full, like a big round tummy, like rubbing my tummy, like lovingly, deliciously. That was so good. I had no desire to eat anything else. I didn't feel like I'd overindulged to the point where I felt physically sick or like just not good in my body. I just felt like really good, like everything that I needed had just hit the spot. So that's what I want you to get to every time you eat. You can also eat to satiety and be way past a comfortable level of fullness, of physical fullness. This is normal, and it's very common if you've restricted previously, which if you're listening to this or watching this, I'm definitely assuming you have previously dieted, maybe for many, many years. So trust that your body always knows what's best and keep honoring her needs. The magic word here is always, you would have heard me say this before if you're an avid listener, is always allow. Keep allowing all foods and give yourself permission to experience pleasure, because pleasure is actually your birthright. The more you allow yourself to eat full, physical and emotionally satisfying meals, the less food will be a thing, and instead it will just be a normal, pleasurable part of life. And sometimes it can honestly feel a bit like a chore, and I'm going to go into that in a moment, but it will just become a normal part of life that is also very pleasurable. We have taste buds for a reason. Allow yourself to experience pleasure. So talking of pleasure, nourishment and pleasure are the two words that I base my food choices on. So whenever I eat a meal, and notice I'm not saying the word snack, because I will go into why in a moment, but definitely for me as an act of self-care, whenever I choose meals, I use the words nourishment and pleasure. So I ensure that I'm nourishing myself physically and emotionally, which is the whole satiety thing, meaning that if something is super healthy for me, yet it tastes bland as fuck, I'm not going to eat it. I'm just not. I've dieted long enough in my life to never eat out of pure fuel or just only nourishment ever again. There's no way, no, I'm not available for that anymore. You know how people are like, food is just fuel. Well, that might work for you, doesn't actually work for me, because if I'm sat there like forcing myself to chew dry chicken and broccoli, I'd rather not eat, to be honest. So, for example, an example of my lunch choice at the moment, because I go through phases and when I get bored, I switch it up again, is a rocket basil and beetroot salad with crispy fried tempeh, like seasoned with all the delicious different things, and then loads of sweet chili sauce. A breakfast option might look like porridge, which for the American listeners, that's called oatmeal. I think it's only us Brits that call it porridge. So oats and milk. I use oats, coconut milk, some berries that are frozen, but then I warm them up in the pan. So it's like warm, hot berries, and massive dollop of Nutella on there. So I'm getting everything, all of my needs met every time I eat. When I was in my binge eating days, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack would look like a jar of Nutella, whack the top off, but you have to get all of the foil off, because then you need to pop it in the microwave for about a minute. You have to keep stirring it a little bit so it doesn't burn around the edges. And I used to literally drink the jar of Nutella. I've shared this story many times, but it was something that I used to do all the time. And that was only because I'd restricted it for so long. I was rebelling against it, and I needed to go through that phase in order to be, quote, normal around Nutella, and therefore I can have it in the house and just take some when I want it. And believe it or not, that can actually be real for you too. It can. And then let me go into the next part of this then. So hunger is not the same as appetite. Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever been physically hungry, yet you didn't have an actual appetite? This is really common when you're sick or unwell, but it's also a normal experience for healthy, quote, normal eaters. And I've experienced this. Now I consider myself in the normal eaters club. It was only like last week or so, I was like really physically hungry. And I was like looking through the cupboards and the fridge, and I'm like, I just don't know what I want to eat. Like nothing is doing it for me. Nothing is exciting for me. And yet I still ate because it's an act of self-care. Like I still nourish myself, but I didn't fancy anything in particular. I mean, yeah, I can always eat chocolate because I like the taste of chocolate, but the stage I'm at with my eating, I'm not going to just choose consciously to have a bar of chocolate for lunch or for breakfast when I've not actually nourished myself yet. So it was just like, okay, food is like a bit of a chore at that point. But that can happen several times a month for, quote, normal eaters, and that is normal. So it just goes to show that appetite is not the same as hunger. And I just want to say that this had never happened to me until I gave up dieting and started living in food freedom. And I would say I experienced this probably around, I don't know, I don't really count, 4 to 5 times a month, when I just really can't be asked to eat or cook anything for myself, but I know I'm physically hungry. So it is a normal part of the food freedom life, just FYI. And I know you might be listening and be like, no way, there's no way I will ever not want to eat. But I used to think the same too. Like some magic shit happens when you like finally give up dieting and you go through this messy and magnificent journey to food freedom. And as I was saying, like when I shared my story about self-care, I would always absolutely encourage you to eat if you're physically hungry, even if you don't have an appetite, because it really is self-care and taking care of you. And now let's do the flip side. So have you ever fancied something to eat when you're not physically hungry? How many hands are up right now? Mine is also. How many times have you walked past a bakery or an ice cream shop and have just been like, oh, I want some of that? Or you can just simply fancy some chocolate. And I want to tell you that it really is absolutely okay to follow your appetite. And actually, it's a super important part in order to feel fully satisfied and normal around food. Usually hunger and appetite come at the same time, but dieters and restrictors tend to satisfy their hunger without satisfying their appetite. This usually leads to cravings, and not to mention the diet binge cycle, which can confuse dieters because they say they're not restricting, but restriction can be both physical and mental, because dieting is not an action, it's a state of mind. So let's go into cravings then. What is a craving? A craving is an intense, urgent desire or longing for something in particular. Now, an example for a craving could be a craving for adventure due to boredom because you just feel unfulfilled in your life. It could be a craving for chocolate. I mean, that had got to be in there, right? And that could be due to restricting calories or restricting chocolate specifically in your life. Even if it's just like trying to eat chocolate in quote moderation, that's still restriction. And I understand the principles of moderation. Trust me, I've been on the moderation only diet before and still ended up binging my face off because dieting is an action, not a state of mind, and allowance is key. And all of that I keep banging on about, but is so key to this work that I share, and that quote works. And when I say works, it means you literally go from an average of 0 to 1 out of 10 for food freedom, where 0 is like no food freedom at all. And my clients work with me for a 3-month basis, and on average they leave with a 7, 8, 9 food freedom. And the same with body image and body acceptance. So when I say works in quotes, my form of working is scoring and marking where you're at when you first come to me, and what you leave marking yourself, and that is food freedom and body love. That's the journey we go on together. So where was I going with this? Craving chocolate, and that can be due to simply not getting enough calories and restricting chocolate specifically, and or it could be due to not experiencing pleasure in your life in general, or it could be not experiencing self-care or downtime. Because if you look at what you're craving, you can ask yourself another question. What does let's use chocolate, for example. What does chocolate bring you? Maybe chocolate brings you relaxation. Maybe it brings you pleasure. Maybe it's a bit of you time. Maybe it's a signal like, oh, I finished work. I've had a busy day. I've took the dog out. I've done my dinner, whatever the kids. I'm going to sit down and just eat some chocolate. Maybe it symbolizes like, you know, the end of the day, the end of the working day. Maybe it reminds you of nostalgia. Obviously, remembering something from childhood or what you used to do as a child. Maybe it's all of those things. So it can be helpful to just get curious about what the chocolate brings you, or what the thing that you're craving, what is it bringing you, and just get curious about that without making anything right or wrong. Another example, your body may be lacking in nutrients. So this is talking about craving still. If you're not having a diet or eating a diet that is sufficient in macro and micronutrients, you may be lacking in those, or vitamins and minerals. And so your body will keep craving food in an attempt to meet those unmet nutritional needs. So cravings ultimately are perfectly fine. We have them for a reason. We don't crave stuff just for shits and giggles. Our body doesn't want us to eat things just to piss us off. There's always a reason behind everything. And you know, the best way to get rid of a craving, do you know what it is to do? Satisfy the craving. Because you could either, let's use the example for adventure. Let's say someone is craving adventure in their life. They could either unconsciously create drama in their life so that they experience some kind of excitement, because that would be, you know, satisfying the craving of excitement, fulfillment. Or they could honor the adventurous craving and go backpacking for 6 months. There's always ways around that we try and get the craving anyway, it depends on how you look at it, if you're willing to go directly to the source. Another example, if you crave chocolate, you could then eat a protein bar instead, or then you could probably have the protein bar, still not feel satisfied, and then go and have 5 chocolate coloured rice cakes. Chocolate covered, not chocolate coloured, although it's probably not actually real chocolate that you're eating, depending on the brand. And then you'd still not have that craving met. So then you would probably eat another low calorie chocolate thing, and then most likely binge on the chocolate you wanted in the first place. Or you could have a craving for chocolate and then go and eat the chocolate and enjoy it. And then your craving has been satisfied then over and over again. And then let's say you think that your diet is lacking in nutrients. And I advise you to seek advice from a nutritionist. And I am a professional nutritionist also. Girl of many talents. I'm also a professional. I sound like I'm literally blowing my own fucking trumpet right now. I'm a qualified personal trainer, the highest level 3 anyway. I'm sure there's way higher specificities. No, Victoria, that's not the word. I'm sure you can specialize. In fact, I know you can specialize in things, but I'm also a personal trainer that I don't do much with. But either way, speak to a nutritionist, and therefore you can just speak to me and I'll give you some advice for free because I'm nice like that. But if you honestly think that your body is craving minerals, vitamins, nutrients, macronutrients, and you're not sure, you can do one of two things. Again, there's always a choice. You can keep trusting your body with what it is your body is craving and hope that your needs get met, which might be a little bit difficult as foods these days aren't what they used to be, are not what they used to be. So if you eat an apple today compared to 200 years ago, probably 100 years ago, and you eat an apple, the apple 100 or so years ago has way more nutrients than it does today, even if it's organic, because the soils are just lacking. So yeah, lots to go into it there, but just be curious about whether you think you're getting enough. And then the second option you've got, this is what I recommend for all of my clients as well. If you think you're lacking nutrients, make sure you've got all of your bases covered by eating enough proteins, carbs, fats, fibers, fruits and vegetables, and adding supplements in. Now, I've wrote a little list of what I recommend every single person take supplement wise, even if they have the quote perfect diet, which actually doesn't exist, but you know what I'm saying. And that is number 1, a decent vitamin and mineral supplement. And when I say decent, I mean, you do get what you pay for. So making sure it's got the vitamin K, like full example, because that can lack very much. Making sure it's got copper in there, because that is actually a nutrient, a mineral, sorry, that many of us lack. And after speaking to the incredible Paris in the last episode, she explains that when most people think they've got an iron deficiency, they absolutely haven't. It's all to do with the copper deficiency. So a decent vitamin and mineral supplement, there's only 5, so don't worry too much. Number 2, magnesium supplement, supplemented before bed, whether that's an oral tablet or you can get magnesium sprays, and I spray it on my skin before I go to bed. It tingles a little bit, but it also helps you sleep really good, because 80% of the whole world's population is deficient in magnesium. And magnesium is so important for all sorts of different bodily functions and energy and metabolism and all sorts. So number 3, I would recommend, as well as the multivitamin and mineral supplement, I would recommend you take a vitamin D3 supplement, 8,000 IC a day. Even in the pack, I think the little bottle usually says take 1 or 2 a day. No, take 8,000. So that's, for me, I take 5 of my little gel capsules, and they're really low price, even for the decent ones. Number 4, to take an omega-3. So whether that's making sure you're really eating enough oily fish, or taking a liquid omega-3 supplement, or just popping in an omega-3 capsule once or twice a day. And then number 5, to take a probiotic for your gut health. So I recommend, just to clarify, vitamin and mineral supplement, magnesium, vitamin D, omega-3, and a probiotic. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share in terms of physical hunger, satiety, appetite, fullness. And now I want to talk about mental hunger. Excuse me, I just had a drink of water. So mental hunger, right? It's when you're thinking about food whether you're hungry or not. Mental hunger is a sure sign of restriction and a lack of satiety, and is extremely common when you first give up dieting. Because when you first give up dieting, you may experience intense mental hunger, even though you are physically allowing all foods. And I want you to know that this is completely normal. It's due to a combination of rebelling against all of the past restrictions, and you may also be currently mentally restricting, aka one example of mental restriction is, what the fuck, how can eating this much chocolate be okay? Or I'm craving a cheese toastie. How is that okay? So it's basically judging yourself and like shaming yourself and questioning yourself and almost being like the food police in your head. That's like mental restriction. And this would subside over time if you keep allowing, there's the word again, and eating whatever you're thinking, eating whenever you're thinking about food. Mental hunger can look like, and this is not limited to, this is just a few of the things that I remember it used to be for me, can be, spending hours looking at cookbooks or watching food porn on YouTube. I would literally watch food challenges because I wouldn't let myself eat the food I wanted to eat. And so I'd watch someone else eat instead. Or I'd just Google like stuff like the gooeyest cookies you've ever seen and just like watch like videos and images of like cookies and brownies. And I remember one time, oh my gosh, I would have been, right, what house was I in? Okay, I was in that house. So I would have been around 11, 12. And I remember, no, actually, it wasn't in that house. I was in, you don't know what house I'm talking about, but when I was a child, we moved when I was 11. So it would have been before I was 11, because it would have been in the house before when I was 11, when we moved. So I remember vividly having a dream where next to my bed, there was a glass of milk and a giant cookie. And I remember waking up out of this dream and reaching out to my side table and searching for the cookie, mouth watering and everything. And the cookie wasn't there. And I was absolutely gutted. And that was like before I was 11. And like I've shared in my personal story, I started dieting when I was 9. I mean, my poor little younger self, she just wanted just a big cookie and just to be okay with eating it and not feel bad about it. Crazy. So mental hunger can look like spending hours looking at YouTube videos of people eating, or just looking at food and cookbooks all the time. It can be daydreaming about what you'd love to eat if you really gave yourself that full permission. It can be thinking about what you're going to eat for lunch as you are still eating breakfast, or maybe not have even started your breakfast yet. It can be getting exceptionally excited and intensely looking forward to meals out and eating opportunities to justify so that you can eat what you desire. So everyone gets excited and looks forward to like meals out and, you know, meeting people and all of that. But I used to get like exceptionally hung up and so like excited, more than I could describe, about going out, not really because of the people, but because of the food that I was going to eat. So I'd become so excited it wasn't normal, purely because then I could almost justify me eating off my diet plan because I was going out, so it was okay to do that. So that can be something to look out for. Mental hunger can look like sat there at night and you're wondering if you should or shouldn't eat the chocolate, and you're going back and forth in your head, thinking about having a second slice of cake when you really want to, but telling yourself you shouldn't, wondering if it's okay to eat something even though you've just only ate lunch because there's still something else that you want to have. It can be lying in bed at night reminiscing on what you'd love to eat or what you've perhaps eaten and what you'd love to eat in the future. Just basically thoughts about food. And mental hunger counts as actual hunger, because most of us tend to discount mental hunger as if it's not as valid as physical hunger. Hunger, again, just to clarify some definition for hunger, hunger is defined as a craving or a need for food, or an uneasy sensation occasioned by the lack of food. Mental hunger is both of these things. They may not be some physical hunger signals, but it is certainly a craving, and it's certainly an uneasy feeling. Mental hunger counts as hunger. And if you are thinking about food, your body wants food. I guess it's similar to sex. You're not really going to be thinking about sex unless you're feeling a bit horny somewhere, right? Just think about that for a moment. If you're thinking about sex, you're most likely going to want to have sex. The same with food. If you're thinking about food, your body wants food. And this terrifies, as you can imagine, most people, as they say, but I'm thinking about food all the time. Surely I don't need to be eating all of the time. Now, here's the thing. If you're thinking about food, you need to eat food. Unrestricted eating and true allowance means just this, that you respond to mental hunger. And the person that is worrying about thinking about food all of the time, most likely, or not most likely, won't be allowing themselves to eat. So therefore, of course, they're constantly thinking about food because they're not actually allowing them to eat every time they think about food. So it's kind of its own feedback loop of fear, really. But as you keep allowing this, the mental hunger will start to lessen. Your desire to eat all the time will gradually decrease. In fact, one of my incredible group coaching clients, and I won't say her name for obvious reasons, but if you're watching this, listening to this, you know who you are. One of my group coaching clients, she's experienced this process very recently. So when she signed up for group coaching, which was about 6 months ago, she was really concerned because she was waking up in the middle of the night almost every single night. I would say nine nights out of 10. And she had the desire to eat, even though she'd eaten enough during the day, because obviously I made sure there was practicality in here, and she was getting enough nourishment, eating enough food, and she was. So all of those needs were being met, and she was still waking up in the middle of the night wanting to eat. And I kept saying to her, please keep allowing this, because your body needs to feel safe, that there's always enough food. And at first, she did struggle to understand why. She still allowed and kept doing the allowance part, which was the key to it all. She struggled to understand why she kept wanting to eat in the middle of the night at first. But after realizing and understanding this work and, you know, the books I've given her to read and my content and all of that, she realized how long and how severely she'd been restricting her whole life. And then it became clear to her. And now that her body and brain are in a state of balance, there's no longer a need to eat all the time. She actually shared in the group last week that she's no longer waking up at night to eat. She sleeps all the way through, and her weight has also balanced out. And she's so grateful because she was wondering if it was ever going to stop, because she kept allowing the hunger. Whenever she thought about food, she would eat. She was kind of thinking, oh my God, is this ever going to stop? But she kept allowing and meeting herself with love, compassion, and acceptance. And now she's at a place where it's all balancing out, and her hormones are balancing out, and her adrenal glands are healing, and all of that beautiful things are happening. And that all happened due to all the past restriction that she had had. And if you're listening to this thinking, okay, maybe it sounds like that client had like severely restricted all their life, but I'm binge eating. Binge eating is a symptom of restriction. Okay, so you fit into this camp as well. If you think you are, quote, weight restored, or if you think you are, quote, too big to be allowing yourself to eat every time you think about food, that's when you still need to trust this process. Because if you have mental hunger, it still indicates that you are restricting food. Now, like I've said before, this might not be physically restricting your calories, but if you have any kind of food rules or shouldn'ts or shoulds in your brain around food, that is restriction, and your brain knows it, and your biology will act accordingly. And the brain wants to obsess over what it wants but can't have. Your brain will obsess over what it wants but can't have. And now I'm going to share an incredible passage from the incredible book that is called Rehabilitate, Rewire and Recover by Tabitha Ferrara. And this describes, and she describes so beautifully, how mental hunger works. So picture, and this is all quote, so quote, picture a person in a desert. Let's call her Jody. Jody is dying of thirst. Jody's mind is overrun by thoughts of water. She dreams about water. She sees mirages of water. Jody's brain would be singularly focused on water and not interested in much else. This is your brain on restriction. Jody in the desert on finding water would go wild. She would drink it and want nothing more to do other than being near water for a long while. She would have a honeymoon period with that oasis where all she would want to do would be to lie next to it and take a sip every now and again. However, if you put Jody in a house where water was on tap, over time, she would cease to obsess about water because water is no longer scarce. When Jody knows that water is in the tap and therefore there for her whenever she wants it, she would relax about it. Jody's brain would switch away from obsessing about water and onto other things like kittens. Quote. Right? Can you see that? And something very similar happened to me when I started my food freedom journey. Because I had previously restricted chocolate many times before, chocolate was always my go-to binge food when I'd fallen off the wagon or when I thought, fuck it, chocolate. It was mainly chocolate, and it would be like ice cream, sweets, all the desserts, those kind of things. But when I gave myself full permission to eat, I did hire a coach. She was a spiritual intuitive eating coach, so she doesn't teach exactly what I teach. There were chunks missing, if you ask me, which is why I've created what I created today, and that's what I do now. But I legit thought I'd just paid someone thousands of dollars to be given full permission to binge eat and put weight on. I was like, what the fuck is this world? This isn't working. But because I'd paid the money and I trusted her and I kept showing up and I kept loving myself through the binges and kept allowing myself to eat chocolate whenever I wanted to eat chocolate, which was like about 7 times a day for about 2.5 months or something ridiculous, I then started to crave other foods. The only reason I started to crave other foods and started to want to eat other foods was because I kept allowing the chocolate. And you will go through this rebellious honeymoon period, usually 9 times out of 10, to the same extent that you've restricted in the past. So because I had restricted severely, and then of course then binging anyway, there was so much rebellion for me to go through, and I kept allowing that and meeting myself with love, and it was fucking hard. I'm not even going to pretend it was easy, because it wasn't. But it was so worth it. I literally now have chocolate in the house. I eat it whenever I want it. I don't think about it. Sometimes I'm like, oh, literally, and I'm sorry if this is going to annoy someone, because this would have annoyed the hell out of me a few years back. I'm that person who like forgets that they've got something in the drawer, and I'm like, oh my God, legit. A couple of months ago, I legit forgot that I'd bought 2 tubs of fucking Ben and Jerry's. What the fuck? How could that ever happen? Because I'm not obsessed with food anymore. I literally enjoy food. I'm such a foodie. I love food. It's not like eating is a chore, apart from very occasionally a few times a month when I want to nourish myself and I can't be bothered and I haven't really got an appetite. Other than that, I love food. And so to be in this position now where chocolate is just chocolate, it's nice and it's delicious and it's still one of my favorite foods, but it's the power has just disappeared from it, because this work that we do together, it's not about taking control around food. It's about taking your power back from food. The more you try and control food, the less control you will actually have, and the more out of control you will feel, which feels and sounds completely counterintuitive, but this is the magic of the work. So as I end this episode, I just want to remind you that your body knows what the fuck she is doing. Definitely need to make sure I've got an explicit label on this podcast. I know I've sworn a lot, so apologies for anyone that is offended by that, which I'm guessing you're not because you're here listening. Just keep surrendering to what you want, keep allowing, keep trusting. And before you know it, you'll really be truly living in food freedom. And then the body love comes with that, because when we work together, we do a shit ton of body image acceptance work, body image confidence work, self-love work, because it's all tied together. In fact, I would say body image is the key, is the core of all of what I teach, because you cannot surrender to food freedom if you are not doing the body image work as well as that. So just to remind you, the ways that you can work with me are, I've got a new way you can work with me, which is the most affordable way yet. And that is with the Body Love Buffet. And so you get weekly coaching by me within the group. You get the Body Love Binge online program, which takes around 4 months to go through. And that's lifetime access you have to that. We have a private podcast. You go into a private support group, which is away from social media. You get free tickets to any of my trainings in the future for life. And you're in all of this for life. There's no like 6 month like time scale anymore. It's just open for life. And it's a one-time investment of either 500 euros or 3 payments of 220 euros. And I tell you now, it will be worth every single ounce of your time, effort, and money. I guarantee it. If you're looking for more personalized one-to-one support, where you become my person to serve, and seriously, I am literally with you every step of the way on your journey. I only take on a limited number of clients. In fact, I wanted to share this, but then I decided not to. I was going to do a screenshot of it, and I was going to screenshot the person away from what this person was messaging me, saying, like a business person asking if they could help me with my clientele and increasing my business and all of that jazz. And I politely replied and said, I'm actually almost at full capacity, which I am for my one-to-one, but thank you anyway. And then their reply was, how about changing the way you do one-to-one so you can have more clients? And I replied saying, no, because part of the transformation that my clients get is because I give so much in-depth personalized support, and I hold that space and I'm with them every step of the way. So therefore, I am not wanting or willing, even if it doubled my income, to take on more clients, because it's so important to me that that client is looked after and given the like 10-star gold service, which is what all of my one-to-one clients get. And it's so important to me. So after that little rant, I you know, when some people say, I have 2 spots left, and in all honesty, sometimes it can be bullshit. I'm not saying it is all the time, but I honestly have 2 spots left for one-to-one until the 3 months finishes on the clients that are upcoming. So if one-to-one is something you want to explore, there's 2 ways you can work with me one-to-one. So it's 3 months of weekly Zoom coaching sessions, or 3 months of fortnightly sessions. We can have a chat about it all. Either way, just reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to share some more information. So I hope that you got a lot from this episode. Also, I would love to ask you a favor. Can you just literally like 5-star my podcast on Spotify, on Apple, anywhere you listen to your podcast? If you can 5-star me, I would really appreciate it, because it really helps people find this podcast, and then the value that I share with my heart, but it's always free. All right, my love, thank you for listening. I will see you next week. Any questions, I'm here for you. If you haven't signed up for my free taste test program, it's on my website. You get access to the first modules of my paid program, so you can taste test it and have a nosy before you probably perhaps join the Body Love Buffet. I will stop talking. Thank you for being here. It's an honor. I love you, and I'll see you next time.